episode is this still?
This is episode 11, Legs 11.
Legs 11, episode 11, and welcome to Park Street. I've been saying street, but it's Avenue. Park Street Avenue Dispensary, Habitat Byron Bay.
Welcome to Parkes Ave Dispensary.
Thank you. So here we are with Jules and James, and many people talk about natural medicines and health medicines and alternate to normal doctor stuff. And I met these guys F45 and beer. We're having beer.
Yep.
I think that time you were brewing kombucha.
No, I was brewing cold
brew of here.
Yep.
And then we got talking, and then I saw the sign appear, and then I saw some of the stuff you were doing, and I thought, oh, interesting. So today we're going to have a little chat about naturopathic medicines.
Mm-hmm.
Jules has got all the answers, and James is going to keep on the straight and narrow. So tell me a very simple thing. When you were a young Jules, what were you doing? Or was this always your thing?
How young are we talking?
Well, wait, Dylan's 19. Let's say 19.
Oh God!
It's all out there, Jules. It's already all out.
You really want to know what I was doing when I was 19?
It's all out there.
You really want to know?
Yeah, because see, Dylan has his own podcast, and he does one that's called Dylan Nicholson's Journey, and it's basically for people who are of his age, teens, either coming through school or whatever, and they're trying to figure out what the fuck, what am I going to do?
Okay. Well, when it comes to sought after careers, what you want to do when you're straight out of high school, maybe don't do this one, kids. At age 19, I was working dancing on some tables that may have contained some poles in a nightclub in Melbourne.
The pole dancing?
Yep.
Oh.
So I spent 10 years in Melbourne doing stripping, and I was a showgirl.
I think we spoke about this.
Yeah.
How's your ankles?
My ankles are fine, my neck not so good. Yeah, not so good.
Do you have a pole here?
No.
Long since retired.
Yeah, in retirement.
Yeah.
So you did that for 10 years?
10 years, from ages 19 to 29.
29?
Yeah.
And then when did this sort of stuff kick off?
Look, I always had a bit of a leaning towards that sort of stuff, towards alternative stuff in terms of the medical world, because I grew up with very, very ill family members who went through the medical system, and it actually made them sicker. And so I always had a leaning towards natural medicine or to some sort of alternative, and always looking for other ideas out there to help people get well, and why the medical system made these people in my life so sick. But I mean, I was living a party lifestyle in my early 20s and really didn't think much past that. So I was stripping at night, and then when I finished my shift at the table dancing clubs, I would go out and be a rave party DJ. So doing anything healthy was the furthest thing from my mind. But it got to my mid-20s, and I started to realise that I better start thinking about the future. And there was a couple of really coincidental things that happened in my life where people came along and kind of, you know, when you get to that fork in the road and someone just turns up at the right time to go, hey, like, check out this fork down here, like, why don't you take some herbs for your anxiety, and why don't you get this fixed up? And so I started to actually experience what it was like to see a naturopath, and that sent me down that road. And I started eating better, and I gave up smoking, and all of those sorts of things were happening. And then the next progression of that was the old, well, what am I going to do with my life? I want to go back to college and do something.
What's this, 29?
Mid to late 20s.
Right.
And so the last 4 years that I was dancing, I was also studying full time to be a naturopath. And then I literally...
How long did that take, 4 years?
4 years full time. And then dancing at night to be able to pay for it. And yeah, as soon as I got that piece of paper in my hand, I cut my hair off and turned it into dreadlocks and left the industry. I was like, right, what can I do to make sure I don't go back to dancing? Because dancing at that time was really good money. It isn't now, I don't believe.
Yeah, it's changed.
Yeah, it's changed a lot. Like we're talking 2005, I left the industry.
In Melbourne?
In Melbourne, and it was really good money. And so I made sure that I took some extreme measures to make sure I couldn't go back to dancing when I was a bit broke. So yeah.
Phones on cameras were really poor quality at the
time.
time.
3 megapixels.
So there was no risk of, you know, you could do a photo shoot and get paid for it, and the consequences are the photos are always out there. But these days, you can have a full video done and not even know, and it's there, it's on the internet forever. So it was a good time to get out.
It was,
I think.
yeah.
And were you
Cameron's getting
together
better.
then? You were together then?
Yes.
Yeah.
What were you doing?
I worked at a private hospital
When we met.
So I would go to work, and I met Jules, and then I would hang out with Jules.
Did you meet at a club?
Yeah.
Like a
Maybe.
strip club?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Were you a punter or were you working there?
Punter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. How did he manage to get your attention in amongst a table full of men?
Well, he looked different to everyone else. He acted different to everyone else. He spoke different to everyone else. He smelled different to everyone else. He just looked like he wasn't really from
It wasn't
there.
my intention. Nobody goes to a strip club to find a girlfriend. It
He
was
was just
never
there
my
having a
intention.
drink,
Okay,
that's
I was just having a drink, and I don't know. I just saw her, and I couldn't stay away from her.
Huh?
But yeah, I invited him to come back, and I was doing competitions at the time as well. So I invited him to come and watch me in a competition. And then he used to just come I actually moved clubs, and he used to come into the next club that I was in just for a drink. I said, "I'll come in on the quiet nights." He'd come in on the quiet nights and hang out, and then he'd give me a lift home from work.
We lived in the same direction, so I offered her a lift home, and she accepted it, and we just started hanging out, and it was an undeniable attraction, I think.
And at that time you were still working at the private hospital?
I was working at the private hospital.
He was having car naps at lunchtime though,
I
because he was
would
out all
pretty much
night.
just be all out all night with Jules, and then I'd go to work, and I had a little office that didn't have a window, so I collected bubble wrap and made a bubble wrap pillow, and I would put my head on my desk and sleep in my office, and I had a pager, so if anyone needed me, the pager would go
Old
off.
school page around that.
Wake up,
Yeah, golden
and off
days.
I'd go. So or I'd go down to the car in the basement and have a nap in the car, and it was good. It was good. And then I did a few other things, but then I was also Jules' driver. So
So would you do like home visits for clubs, for bucks nights and that sort of
Home
stuff?
visit, that sounds a bit dodgy. But yes, I did we called it the circuit, but it basically meant, we come to you.
Right.
So there were also pubs in Melbourne that had like 15-minute stage shows. So you would turn up at the pub, do the show, leave, take the money from the pub owner, then turn up at the next club, do the show, take the money, and keep going. And then in between those, you
It's not bad, isn't it?
It was good.
It's good business.
It was really good, and
great,
I don't know if I had daughters, I don't know if I'd recommend it as a really solid career choice, because it was really hectic and dangerous, and you got to meet a lot of very interesting Melbourne characters at that time who maybe you don't want to be friends with. And so it wasn't the safest job. And in between some of those pub shows, you would also do what they call private shows, which would be like a bucks party or a 21st birthday or an 18th birthday, or what they told you was an 18th birthday, but they didn't all really look 18 when you got there. And it's like, hang on, has anyone here got ID?
they were the worst.
The 18th birthdays were the very worst. They were the scariest.
So you mean that were like 16, 17 with the younger?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you had the whole family. There might be granddad there, and there'd be younger brothers
Mum,
and
dad,
sisters,
aunties,
cousins. So the gig was that we would get the gig, we would drive there, I would get out of the car first, and I'd go and find our contact, the person whose name was on the bill, basically. So my job was to look around, and it was my decision if we did the job or not. So if it looked safe, we'd do the job. Find the contact, he was a nice person, and he would pay us up front, and then we do the show. There were always shows that we would turn up to, and I just walked in, and it was just, there's no way we're doing the show here. And I'd say, yeah mate, no worries, I'll go and get her, and we just get in the car and piss off.
Not today.
There's no way. But then you would get the 18th birthday parties where the younger girlfriend would get super jealous of Jules and just want to scratch her eyes out. And
she would decide her best course of action would be to bail me up in the toilet and then go me. And I'd be like, she'd probably be quite small and I'm quite tall, and I'd be like, just go away. Just go away. So my driver, which was often James, would like kick everyone out of the ladies' toilet, and then I'd go in to get changed, and he would have to barricade it to make sure no one went in there after me, because it was usually the girls who would have a problem with me. Oh, yeah, mate, why'd you do that? Why'd you even look at my boyfriend for? I'm like, mate, I don't want your boyfriend. Especially towards the end of my career, I'm like, I'm 10 years older than your boyfriend, mate.
So that was an interesting...
It was funny when you say that. When me and Sally met in London, she was told about the money you can make in strip clubs. Not as a stripper, but more as a hostess.
Oh no, that's just to get you into stripping.
Yeah, but she went, so this is what happened. So she went for the first night. I knew the guys that owned the club. I think it was called Raymond Review Bar, or Spearmint Ryan, I can't remember, in London. She went in, and her job was to meet all the suits and get them to buy the fucking most expensive Cristal, or like some 300, and the server girls would come and keep topping up, and Sally and her mate would always excuse herself, go around the corner, tip it out, fill up for a sparkling water, come back and scull it, keep the bottle going. Sally said the stuff was too good to chuck, so she'd get pissed. She was pissed after like 3 glasses. I got a phone call. Scotty, you gotta come and get her. She's pissed. Sally's up, well pissed. I had to go and get her. She's like, I said it was too good, because they were going to get like £70, like 50 quid, 80 quid for a couple of hours work.
Yeah.
But I thought that was good money, because her rent back then was like 35 quid or 60 quid.
Yeah.
And one night she got the sack. Her mate kept on with it. Her mate was a bit more with it.
That's generally how they get the girls in. As
Yeah,
they come in and work the bar or be a hostess, and then the girls would go in and they just, if they were into it, they would see how much money the girls would make, and and next minute they're
it's
dancing.
just a gateway to dancing.
She got the bullet. So we're up to now, you're at 30, mid-30s. The hair's gone, the heels are away. And you've got your paper piece of degree. What do you do then?
Well, I did what most naturopaths do when they first get out of college, and I went and got a job working in a health food shop for a few years, because that's kind of where we go to cut our teeth, because you're seeing humans every day and you're seeing volume every day.
You mean like a Santos or like Go Viper or something like that?
Yeah. So in Melbourne I worked at a health food shop in East St Kilda called Barrett's. I think it's not there anymore, but I think there's something there in its place now. But it was on Carlisle Street in East St Kilda, and it was busy. And that's where I was when I was at uni. So at one stage I was full-time at college, dancing at night, and doing a couple of days a week in the health food shop to start getting my human interaction up, talking to people about their health. So that was an interesting time. And then once I finished dancing and I was just focused on work, then I worked in a dispensary. So it looked like this, but it was attached to an organic supermarket in Blackrock, and it was called Macro Whole Foods. And they're not around anymore either.
Yeah, that used to be, isn't it, the brand Woolies called?
Yeah, so it turned into Thomas Ducks.
Yeah, because we used to supply them usually.
Yeah. So we had this like beautiful fruit and veggies and organic produce and like gorgeous products and like a skincare section, organic baby nappies, like all the things. And then there was this little nook that looked a lot like this, that was just like a little alcove where the naturopaths were, and you could come up to the counter there and we would mix you up a potion. And that's where I learned that I really liked this model, because it was really, really fun.
It was a good job. You enjoyed that job. And we lived like
around
probably
the corner,
100 metres away around the corner. So it was ideal. They were just opening this big store that used to be it's where I grew up, and it used to be a video store. And then we were walking down the beach one day, and we came back, and there's a job they needed naturopaths or something, and we're like, oh, we'll get into that. You should definitely.
It's mine.
It's that type of industry that the colleges are churning out grads all the time, but the amount of actually advertised positions for naturopaths is minimal.
Yeah.
So it is a job where you've got to learn the science, and then what you do after college is what you make of it.
And you often do a lot of things all at once. Like a lot of new grads are out there doing 3 different jobs. And like I was working 5 days a week in the dispensary, but I also was working 1 day a week in drug and alcohol rehab, because there was a drug and alcohol rehab facility in Victoria that was looking for a naturopath. And I thought, there's something I've never done.
It was
So
an hour and a half away.
it was an hour and a half away. It was like
It's a massive drive.
out in the middle of
3
nowhere,
hours of your day on.
up a dirt road in this. I was driving a tiny little Toyota Echo at the time, which is like a Yaris, and it'd skip over like you think Byron roads are bad, like you should have seen. It was like the worst potholes and shingly and dangerous, and I'd be like, oh, I can't believe I'm doing this every week. But you'd get there, and it was a wonderful job. Did it for a couple of years.
So when you say that, so people drug and alcohol, so they would be getting a lot of herbal alternatives to help get them off the booze or stabilise them mentally?
A lot of mental health stuff and a lot of withdrawal symptom relief, and trying to help with the cravings. And I wish I knew then what I know now, because biochemistry and nutrient therapy the research in those areas have come such a long way since then, that now I know so much that I could have applied back then, but I guess that's a decade later that's bound to happen. And back then I was giving people just whatever I could. We couldn't even give them alcohol. So all of these tinctures contain alcohol, right? They're all made with ethanol. And when you have your herbal medicine, you're only having a few mils, so it's pretty much negligible what you're getting. But if you're in rehab, you're not allowed to have a single drop. So we had to find really creative ways to get herbs into people, whether it was teas or looking for powders or tablets, or finding specially made herbal medicines called glycetrax that didn't have alcohol in them. And then we were using homeopathic remedies and whatever we could get our hands on. But a lot of what I was doing out there was teaching them nutrition, because they so many people who've been through addiction just eating the world's poorest diet, it's just white bread and sugar and coffee, and there's not enough nutrition there, but there's also not enough protein to balance their blood sugar, and when their blood sugar dives, they get more cravings. So I'd be out there just getting into the kitchen with them, and we'd be like, right, let's pull out the pantry and have a look at what's in this pantry that's really good, and what in this pantry you might want to avoid, and what we could do as a substitute for that thing. So we'd pull out the breakfast cereal, and I'd be like, right, let's look at the nutrition panel. How much sugar per 100 grams? All right, you don't want that one. Put that one in that pile there. And we'd do these mini workshops in groups where we'd start to look at food and touch the food and read the labels and teach them what the alternatives were. And really simple stuff that you can do on a budget, okay, you need protein with every meal. Lentils are cheap. Let's talk about how much you would have. And so it was you just make do with what you've got. And that was a really good experience actually, because it teaches you to not just rely on the same stuff all the time.
You enjoyed that.
I loved it.
You enjoyed that one too. It was a big commute that got to you in the end.
It was the driving that made me stop in the end, because it wasn't very
And they had to be quite remote, because people would always try and break out.
They bolt.
They do a runner, but because they're right out on this dirt, they only get halfway down the driveway and be fuck it, I'll go back to
We'd even give them a head start. If we knew someone was doing the bolt, they would just let them go for half an hour, and then they'd go and pick them up, because by that stage they would have been a bit more worn out, easier to manage. They go, I'll just give them.
So were they living in these facilities?
Sorry?
Were they living in this facility?
There'd be 15 beds, and I think 12 or 13 of those were paid beds, and the other ones were charity beds, which meant that you got this amazing mix of people who'd paid a lot of money to be there, and then a few people who hadn't paid any money to be there. So you'd get, and it was I think now they're charging about $30,000 a month for those beds. So you get people who'd come from very, very well-off jobs or backgrounds, or a lot of, unfortunately, private school kids whose parents had the cash to put them into the rehab. But then you mix them in with people who'd just been done for armed robbery, and the magistrate says, you can either go to rehab or you can go to jail. And I'd be like, rehab. You just put them all in and mix them up. Big old personality
with
soup.
one big thing in common.
Addiction.
Yep.
That's what I was just thinking. Addiction's free.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're riding a Rolls Royce at the back of a fucking police bus.
No.
You can get
Addiction's free.
It doesn't choose.
It's how you attain the addiction that costs you the money.
Yeah.
That's interesting, because it's when you were saying that, my mind was going because I always imagine this style of dispensary, or I'm going to call it chemist, but a natural chemist, it would, in my mind, would normally be for someone that can afford it. But what you've just said there is actually interesting to see that people that can't afford it can still access it through somebody's government.
Yeah.
Because I was watching a documentary in the UK the other day. It was an alcohol rehab clinic, all these old men in London, and every day they'd come round, every 2 hours, they'd give them 2 cans of beer. And the social worker was saying, it's easier to give them less beer and stop them with the shakes and all the whatever. And we'll try and give them less beer, but you get 2 cans of Carlsberg, you get 2 cans of special brews. I was watching it and that was not my vision of what these places would be.
Yeah, they're all different. That one sounds different again, but it may work for some people because it's the side effects that often makes people crack and go back to it in those early stages. So whatever you can do to help relieve the side effects is always going to be helpful, but you've just got to stay on it because you don't know when those side effects are going to hit or take a turn for the worse. And so you need to have people prepared, and you know, if that works for them, great. The one I worked at, not even a drop. Like they just cold turkeyed them, but also would take them to AA meetings and NA meetings, which meant they were on nil. Yeah, it was really interesting.
When I lived in London, I think it was 18 the first time I came across that herbal stuff. I was living by myself, I was lonely in a big fucking city, and a mate's wife said, "You should have some St. John's wort." I said, "What's that?" She went, "It's a tea." She went, "But it's a tea for
anxiety, depression.
Yeah. She goes, "Try some of this tea." I don't know if it worked, but I took it. It was a little weird. The tea for me back then was 2 sugars of milk. So when she said tea, my mind went, "Oh, I'll try that tea." But it wasn't that. Do you sell St. John's wort?
Yeah, we've got some up there.
So is there something that relieves anxiety and depressions, is it?
That's what we use it for, yeah. We use it a lot for those sorts of things. And nerve pain's the other one we often use it for. Anything to do with the nerves. But yeah, we use it as like a natural alternative to an antidepressant if a person wants to go down the natural route. Like antidepressants, it can take several weeks to kick in to have its full effect. So in terms of having an anti-anxiety effect, it may work quite quickly, but it also may build up over 6 weeks. And so we leave people on it for quite long amounts of time. And yeah, in the right person, if it's the right herb for that person, it can be quite good. Yeah.
And would someone just keep having that as a cup of tea? I think I got to teach you maybe a cup of tea with it. I only had it once.
Some herbs I think are better as a tea. Some herbs I think are better as a tincture. And so St. John's wort, I've never used it as a tea. We don't see it as a tea very often here, but we use it in tincture form really frequently. But there are other herbs here that I use as a tea that are really, really strong, powerful, like just as good as having a tincture, I think. Things like chamomile, lemon balm, those sorts of things. Peppermint, the digestive ones.
I was just about to say, I had a dodgy stomach this morning. I had a nice hot cup of peppermint tea.
Yep.
Fixed it.
Does the job.
Was it the hot water or was it the peppermint? I don't know.
Who cares? Keep having it. Yeah.
What's lemon balm for?
Lemon balm you use for similar things, so it's like griping and tummy pain, but it's also really, really good for anxiety and helps to calm people down. So that's the thing with herbal medicines. Often a herb will do more than one thing. It'll have more than one action, and sometimes on different areas of the body. So that's why I love herbal medicine so much, because you might have 10 different herbs that are great for helping with anxiety, but one will be for anxiety that is associated with tummy pain. And you'll be like, that's the one, right? But then another one might be anxiety accompanied with another symptom. And so, like, instead of just giving people a random pick out of those 10 herbs, you ask the person what other symptoms they've got going on. If you came and said that you had anxiety, I'd be like, well, what else is happening in your life? How's your digestion? How's your skin? How's your liver? Like, how's everything else? And then we pick the right herb out of that for you, because there'll always be something in there that's just specifically for you.
I remember my time again living in London. I used to get the tube, and how you went down the tube, there was always adverts. There was a brand there called, I was going to say Metamucil, but it wasn't Metamucil, but it was like for men. It showed you this fit man, and it was like, you just take one tablet and it's got everything you need.
Because that's all men will take.
Is it a man tablet here? Is it like an overall something?
I'll give you man tablet. No.
There's not. So
No.
you have to.
You can't fit it all in one tablet.
Right.
What you need, I can't
No.
stick into something that big.
No.
But there's a culture of man tablet. The man tablet culture is a real thing. Men will only take one thing often.
Squeeze it all together.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some old-fashioned ideas about multivitamins, vitamins,
Yes,
because that's all people had access to, and naturopaths didn't advertise, and social media wasn't around. So people thought, well, I'll just take that. Oh, it's a men's multi.
That'll do.
That'll fix everything, and it's just not. It's not really the case. You can't. You have to get to the. Everyone's got different conditions, and you have to get to the root of the condition and treat that, and the other things will take care of themselves.
You know, when I travel with two things, apart from my farmers usually. A bag of psyllium husk and a Barocca or hair lemon.
Oh no, okay, we have to talk.
So what I do with the Barocca is I put it in like a big 2 litre bottle of water and I drink that throughout the day.
Mm-hmm.
My mind says it's an easy fix, so you're going to shoot me down here, right? My mind says it's the man capsule. Number one, it looks orange.
Man juice.
When I pee, it's like, oh, something's happened because my pee goes orange, whatever it is, or yellow.
It's nice, but we can do better.
Right.
Yeah.
But I take it because it's like, for me, it's that man thing. It's easy.
It's comfortable
I
and
can
easy.
put that in my water and I think, alright, at least I'm covering it, but with good fibre. Get my muesli for my food. I get an extra bit of fibre from my psyllium husk.
Yeah.
And I always take the Barocca or hairy lemon, whatever I can find. So what would be your thing to me? What would be Park Street's man tablet for me, someone that's travelling? I'm at a trade show.
Well, I can't advertise products.
This is what we were
we're not
talking
allowed
about.
to. But we do have multivitamins that I think may have a little bit more active ingredient in them than some of the ones you
And
mentioned.
for someone like me, would I be able to just put that in water?
No.
Or
Why
just
are you
take
obsessed
it,
with putting things in water?
Just take it as
Just drink it.
Just drink
What
it.
do you mean drink it like a liquid?
No. Capsule on tongue.
Oh, right,
done.
right.
Then you don't have to wreck your water by putting chemicals in
Right.
it for the rest of the day.
So when you say that you're referencing Barocca as a chemical?
I'm like, don't draw me on
But
brand.
this is what we're talking about with advertising and what people we're allowed to say and what we're not allowed to say. So that brand has been on TV for how many years, telling you that if you have it, if you've lost vitality, it'll give you back your bounce, and
if you never had it, you find it
anyway. We just can't make those sorts of claims.
There's two types of supplement companies in the world. Ones that spend their money on research, development and quality ingredients, and ones that spend their money on marketing. Which one do you want to go with?
Well, that's easy.
Yeah, but it's actually easier. So some of the multivitamins that are on the market right now, especially the cheap and cheerful ones that you would pick up at the supermarket, those formulas have not been changed in decades. So I was taking those supplements when I was 20 years old, and they haven't changed in 20 years, right? So is it possible that in the last 20 years, we've got more research, more technology, better ingredients have come to market? Yeah, right? So for example, some of the old supplements might have magnesium phosphate or magnesium oxide in them.
And what's the difference?
Oh, they're not very well absorbed forms of magnesium. But since those were made, right, in the last decade or two, you have now got a choice of magnesium citrate, magnesium amino acid chelate, magnesium glycinate, and we often lean towards those sorts of ones in practice because we know they're better absorbed. Now, they're better absorbed, why aren't these companies using them, right? A couple of reasons. One, these ones are more expensive. The new ones are more expensive. Two, because they're chelated to sometimes, like an amino acid chelate, it means they've bound the magnesium to an amino acid. It makes the particle size bigger, which means that you actually need to put more in, which means it's going to cost them more, right? So it's cost and quality of ingredients. And then the other clincher is if you've got an old multivitamin over here that's 20 years old and you go, oh, I know there's a better form of magnesium out there now, I'm going to put magnesium citrate in this multi. The TGA will make you rename the multivitamin So now you're not allowed to call it that old
The
name.
name it's been said for the last 20 years.
Correct.
Yeah,
Right.
you can't call it that anymore. You now have to call it, I don't know, you might have to call it Barocca Active or Barocca Force or Barocca Bounce, but you can't call it Barocca anymore because you've changed the formula, and that would be misleading to everyone who knew it as Barocca, right? So as soon as you change the formula, you change all your marketing, packaging, everything. How expensive would that be? It's easier.
And why would they?
And-
Because they sell millions of them anyway, because people see it on TV.
So do you put your money into that, or do you just put your money into advertising it? So some supplement companies will do one, some will do the other, some will be dragged kicking and screaming into the new formula. There's a really popular multivitamin, not Barocca, but there's another really popular multivitamin that's always been marketed on TV that now has got a better formula, but it took them 20 years. They like literally went into that new formula kicking and
Does it
screaming.
begin with a C?
I can't say. But you won't find it in here. But yeah, like that's why you don't see that progress in the mainstream multivitamins, because it affects their packaging, their marketing, everything. Like it's a huge operation to change it. Whereas the formulas that you'll often see naturopaths working with, they can quietly go and change a formula behind the scenes. It'll still cost them 150 grand to change it over, but that's nothing compared to like what the big companies would have to go through. So, and naturopaths will lean towards a brand because it's got the best of everything in it, or it's got ingredients in there that we think are better absorbed, or we trust them more, or they're coming from America rather than from China, or whatever it is.
Because it is very much that, but we talk about that in food, with some of the, when we put our muses together and how we sell it is we try and get combination foods to get the absorption rate the best in the gut. There's two things that I have Angela Graphis, that's my man tablet,
Andrographis,
and Armour Force. So I've got the man version for me and Sally, and I've got the powder one for the kids. But I give it to them every day, especially during this time at winter time.
You know what? They're actually now, the latest research that's come out in the last few months, interestingly, has actually suggested that Andrographis is not the best pick to take every day, and that you're better off just taking it when you're acutely ill, and you might be better off looking at other things for long-term use. So there's always new research coming out. We've got my clients and we've got Paige's clients.
Jules has a pretty specific client because she's found an area that she's passionate about, and she's targeted advertising and marketing towards those women. Yeah. And she's found them
it's mums with fatigue.
Wow.
So it'll be mums they'll be aged 35 to 45.
35 to 45.
They'll have 2 kids under 8 years old,
Most
and they'll be tired.
Have had various health problems since teenage years, never really looked into them too seriously because life gets in the way. They eventually get to the point where they are burned out, and they've been to several doctors or other practitioners, and generally they will find Jules towards the end, and they will just be at the end of their tether. So that's definitely Jules' demographic, but we have a younger practitioner who seems to be attracting a younger crowd.
Yeah, she's getting a lot of skin cases and gut cases in girls in their 20s. Yeah.
I just think about certain, it was a good point. It just flew right past me there.
But yeah, not many men.
Not many men.
Very few men.
We don't mind when they do.
I think because women investigate, men don't investigate. Men will suffer in silence.
I'm a bulk shopper. Like I told Sally, I'm going to go for a service. I go to a doctor and I just say that I want this and that, and you don't see me again for a year or two.
Yeah.
I'm a bulk, when I go shopping, I buy everything in one go.
You
don't see me again.
Yeah. Well, men will suffer.
Your age group, 19, are you talking about this stuff?
I feel like it's the people that you're around. Like if you live around like healthy people, then you're naturally curious about it. But if you're like at uni and you're in that college lifestyle, I think like everything that you're doing is pretty much killing your whole body. So you sort of don't want to know about it in that aspect.
And you're resilient at that age.
Yeah.
Dylan, fire away. Dylan represents a young team of today.
All right, young Dylan.
All right.
Heads up.
What's the weirdest thing that you do every day that you don't like to tell everyone else?
Gorgeous chocolate. Who's the chocolate muncher?
Every day.
Could be a
Yeah.
weird little habit, you know, in your morning ritual or something like that.
I'll tell you what mine was.
Mine, nothing's weird about mine. I'm pretty habitual. Coffee. And yeah, I do eat dark chocolate.
Do you ever scratch between your toes and sniff your finger
Never.
to see if they're clean?
Not interested.
No.
Do you do that?
Mine are clean because
No.
I look after myself, Scott.
Dylan scratches his bum and sniffs his finger.
No!
Peculiar?
Do I do anything weird?
No,
No.
I don't think so.
I don't know. Been obsessed with jigsaw puzzles recently. Does that count? Like, but not just sit
Is
and
that
do
because
them.
of
Like,
corona?
just walk past and start doing bits. But
Oh,
that's a
because of the
corona
Rona.
issue.
Locked up.
Rhino.
No,
Slowed down my hair.
I mean,
Yeah.
people probably think my supplement regime's a bit weird, but
Yeah.
as a naturopath, it's completely normal. And then I know you used to think it was a bit excessive, but then one of our naturopaths, Paige, went on Instagram and she was like
Yeah,
doing
this
this
is-
video
this is
of
worse.
all of her supplement regime, and James is like, oh wow, she takes a lot more than you, and I'm like, see, it's a naturopath thing. But I have like a cupboard upstairs, and all the bottles are lined up, and every morning I just go that one. Oh, you're not till lunchtime. That one. That goes with that one, and then it's just done. But that's not honestly. That would probably be considered weird, but for me, it's perfectly normal.
And all those, you take all those things and you don't have to check that between your toes is
That's
stinky,
right.
It's just
Because
not.
there's no fungus there anymore. Problem solved.
No dairy, no fungus.
No, I always put between my toes and sniff.
Oh
Have a sniff to see if it's clean. Better wash those toes. What did you have for breakfast this morning?
Smoothie.
no! Smoothie.
What was in
I
it?
have a smoothie most mornings, so I have a handful of cashews, a banana, some ice,
Protein
some
powder.
frozen organic blueberries, and some protein powder that is not whey protein, that is a raw protein powder. So I'm getting protein from the powder and the nuts, and keeps me going until we have lunch. And I have that most mornings.
What did you have, Sam?
Same, but I make mine separately to him sometimes because James can handle higher sugar things, whereas I will crash and burn. Like I just can't. I'm a little bit ADHD sometimes in that, like my concentration is really not good. And so if I want to stay on track, I need to keep sugar levels really, really basic. So I take out the banana and put probably a little bit less fruit in there, like less berries, and then bump up the protein bit. And then I wash down a bunch of supplements with it.
And we make the smoothies
A
just
couple of
with,
squirts, vitamin
the
D.
smoothies just with water, no kind of
No milk.
alternative milk or milk, or anything, just with water, and it's
Yeah.
beautiful.
And then coffee.
And
So
coffee.
today's Friday. It's nearly time for beer o'clock around Australia.
Yeah,
Do you guys beer o'clock?
Yeah.
yes,
Is it
I wine o'clock.
1 o'clock?
wine, and I
See, wine's alright.
I'm not perfect.
You don't need to be perfect.
and I have gluten-free beer, so
I do you have that?
well, I go out of my way to make sure that a lot of them they're not advertised as gluten-free because they don't want to go down that whole avenue. Stone and Wood, the local brewers, their Green Coast Lager is low gluten.
What is it?
Corona. There's quite a few, and I just have a handy little list. It hasn't got all beers on it.
So it's an app?
No, it's just a list I found on the website.
Right.
And it just tells me like some are less than 20 parts per million. I know that if I have a few of those, I don't get bloated and I don't feel terrible after having it. Whereas if I have a few schooners of Tooheys New or something,
Yeah, you know about it.
bloat
Yeah.
and all those things that people say again that are normal, that aren't normal, they're just common.
Yeah.
So I go
and
out.
I reckon it affects your breathing as well.
Yeah, it does. I'll have a big night on normal beer, and it's not that I don't drink normal beer. I try not to, but if I have to, if I'm in that situation, then that's cool. I like beer, but if I have a big night, yeah, it'll affect sinuses, and I'll snore, and I'll get kicked out of bed.
That seems to be, I would say, a normal thing that women always reference now. If he's been drinking, he snores more.
Yeah.
It's not normal. It's just common.
It's common.
Common.
That's the statement. It's not normal. It's just common.
That's the tagline.
That's it.
Thank